I need a grave digger.
Hi, Zizaran here with another video, and this is going to be a hardcore video. So this is going to cover why you should play hardcore and who it's for, and tips and tricks for hardcore. And I do want to start off by saying that quite a lot of us streamers are going hardcore trade this league as opposed to solo self-on because there's no boss kill event. Now and again, we all message each other and we're like hardcore trade, because when a lot of streamers go hardcore trade, it ends up having a healthier economy. And we've had a lot of the people that regularly play hardcore trade saying like it makes a big difference. So that is happening this league. We have a lot of us going, like Ben and me and Steel and Ventura and lots of others, I think. So it should be quite a lot of action. So instead of being dozens of us, there are going to be hundreds of us. And the economy is very different from softcore. First, let's start off with telling a little bit about hardcore mode. Hardcore is a mode where you lose your character on death. It is transferred to standard mode, not the equivalent of the league. So if you're playing on Necropolis hardcore and you die, you go to standard, not Necropolis softcore. So for most intents and purposes, that means that for most people, you consider your character completely gone and dead. You can use it for testing purposes on standard, but generally most people don't play a character once it's dead. However, you do get to keep everything in your stash. You do not lose that. You just lose what your character gets moved over. So you lose everything that's on that and your character, and anything that's in your inventory. So why do a lot of people play hardcore? So why, I was like, a lot. So why do people play hardcore? Well, there's a lot of different reasons, and it depends on the person. For me, I love the thrill of getting close to dying, the like rush that you get. And I play so much personally that, you know, everything is very inevitable. It generally takes me like 16 hours /played to kill all the Ubers on softcore, and then I've sort of run out of stuff to do, of the stuff that I find enjoyable. Whereas in hardcore, it prolongs that. It's a very different economy, and things feel a lot more impactful and like they matter more. Now, it is important to say here, if you're having fun, you're playing Path of Exile right, no matter what mode you're playing. A thing that's really cool is the economy is very different, so item prices matter a lot. I remember back in the day, things like Rat's Nest would be 1C on hardcore, but actually expensive on softcore. And the TLDR there is any item that's like tank related, anything that like increases your defense. Like a good example that softcore players might not think about is a Watcher's Eye, with like the purity of elements, physical damage taken as elemental, or purity of fire, physical taken as fire. Those, especially double ones, are probably 10x the price they are on softcore, sometimes even more. So Watcher's Eyes, anything with defensive stuff can be really, really skyrocketed. Valorb corruptions, suppression gear, very important, to the point where MF gear might be quite cheap on hardcore, but suppression gear might be like, people might not even buy anything that doesn't have suppression on it. So fractured suppression bases at some point can be like crazy amounts of divines. Boss items, not everybody can do bosses on hardcore. The Ubers are very, very hard, and very few people are able to farm them. So if you're actually really good at bosses, you get insanely rewarded for that. And there's a lot of different content you're very rewarded for. In fact, honestly, if you're able to keep your character alive for like 5 to 7 days and you don't have to like keep buying new stuff because you're dying, you will find that you're like growing in wealth pretty quickly. Now, obviously, you also want to play differently with like keeping a lot more items, keeping hand-me-downs from previous characters, and thinking about like, what am I going to do if I die? So having like a leveling gear set and stuff can be quite useful. Now, the number one thing when playing hardcore is choosing a really solid build. You really want to play something that has great defensive layers. But the most important thing, in my opinion, is, especially if you don't know what you're doing, playing a build that scales with levels. So, for example, Explosive Arrow, Elemental Hit are some attacks that scale with levels, but most attacks scale more off the weapon. So if I stay in an area in level 4 or 5 more levels and get 2 or 3 gem levels, that doesn't give me a lot of gem levels. But most gems, like Spark, like most spells and things like that, as well as some of the abilities that I mentioned, they will actually gain roughly 15% more damage per level. So if I stay in an area over level, let's say that I over level as much as 7 levels, I might be getting 45 to 70% more damage, which is a huge difference, right? Like, it's a very, very large difference. So you're going from maybe taking a few seconds to killing the monsters to just clipping them down. So that's really good. And I do actually recommend, for somebody that's completely new and trying hardcore, overleveling as much as 7 levels by holding control when re-entering the zone and doing that over and over again is really good. Now, strangely and sadly, that is a little bit worse this league because the league mechanic in Necropolis is intended that you're like moving through different zones. Maybe going from one zone to another could be better than farming the same zone over and over again. I haven't played this league, so we don't know that yet. But there are leveling zones during the campaign that is quite good to farm the same zone over and over again. I'll show you some of them now. So like early on, City of Zizaran and Northern Forest is quite good. Act 4, there isn't really a good one, but Combe Stronghold is okay. Act 5, this is one of the best leveling points at all during the campaign. Chamber of Innocence. Even on softcore, people will farm here till sometimes like 45, 46. If you're on hardcore, farming to 50 or 51 is not a bad idea. The reason for that is that Act 5 Kitava is one of the most dangerous things you will meet during the campaign. It is such a filter, and that is because the slam can deal like 1.6k damage. So a lot of people farm up to like 1.8k life, focus really heavily on farming gear in this zone, and just take it really, really carefully there. Act 6, generally you don't need to farm here because you spend so much time in Act 5, but you can farm in the ridge area here. Act 7, Ashen Fields is okay. Act 8, I have a theory that Grain Gate might be kind of cool because of the 7 unique monsters there. But Harbor Bridge is quite good, and then Blood Aqueduct is really, really good in Act 9. Act 10, Desecrated Chamber. So that's some of the zones that you can stay and overlevel in. It's pretty safely. Out of all those zones, Blood Aqueduct is the scariest zone that people farm. Very often, people will avoid that because the Blood Aqueduct can be so dangerous. And I do suspect that it will be extra dangerous this league with the way the league mechanic works and makes some of the monsters scarier. Now, generally on hardcore, you do want to resist capped as early as Act 2 or Act 3. Well, how do you do that? How do you resist cap that early? Not everybody knows that you can we're generally focusing really hard on like socket pressure more than actually having rare and blue items. Now, if you do find a really good item like double resist and an open suffix that you can craft with your crafting bench, then absolutely, that's definitely worth looking into. However, what you'll see a lot of racers and stuff do is literally craft on a white item. So as soon as you're level 12, for one transmute, you can put 16 fire res on a white item. You don't need it to be blue with an open suffix. You don't need it to be rare with an open suffix. And if you don't know how to see, you can hold Alt on an item and it'll... Do I have rares here? You can hold Alt on an item. So this one has 3 prefixes, 1 suffix, then 2 open suffixes. If you are completely new, you probably shouldn't be watching this video because you shouldn't be playing hardcore for your first playthrough unless you have a lot of time. You will die repeatedly and have to learn a lot. Hopefully you already know quite a lot of the game by the time you are playing hardcore. But in the side area in Northern Forest, this is where you get your first hideout and then the crafting bench. Other than that, like you literally can start crafting as soon as you're level 12. Do keep an eye out for the level requirement. If we look here, you can see here, level 12 is the level requirement. You could actually help Illyria for 15 all rest, makes it even easier, and then you can respec that later for 20 regrets. You really want to be careful with what extra content you engage in too. Like for example, Beyond can be very dangerous, Betrayal can be very dangerous. So, you know, maybe sometimes even leaving when you see these things. I have a very important rule that if I ever see Revenants, it's this creature that you see right now. If I ever see those, I literally don't look at my chat. I look at the screen. So if you see those red pillars, they're so responsible for a lot of deaths. Now, they are reworking a lot of the Corpse Explosion visual effects, so they might look even better this patch. But either way, Corpse Explosion is a big no-no. And speaking of deaths, using something like Shadowplay or OBS to record and learn from your deaths when you die, like it's not footage you have to keep, but just being able to review your death when you die, since Path of Exile doesn't have a death log, it doesn't do a good job of explaining what killed you, being able to rewatch that or maybe reach out to somebody like myself and be like, hey, Zizaran, I don't know what killed me here. That's actually something I have a series for where I explain people's deaths, because the game doesn't do a great job of that at the moment. Another thing that's very important is rolling maps. Sometimes I'll see softcore players that are asking for why they died. And if we scroll back to the start of the clip and we see the map they're running, it can be like crit multi, min-max, and 2 times physical as extra fire, etc., or like fire and cold, and sometimes haste, frenzy, etc. And honestly, like when you're new to hardcore, doing more than 1 damage mod can be very scary on the map, especially if you don't know what combos really well. Like global damage is really scary, so just like the increased damage mod, frenzy charges, both of these are very scary and can make other things do insane damage. Fizz's extra chaos with the wither can be scary. The absolute scariest of them all is monsters fire 2 additional projectiles, followed by players have minus maximum resistances. You can use the item Lore Wave to bypass that. monsters crit more as well, you're very likely to get bursted down a lot more. And obviously, it's very like build specific, but sometimes you have to be careful for reflect, you have to be careful for no regen, etc. There's a lot of things like that that is very worth being careful of. So obviously, there's a lot of different things to watch out for, and make sure that you don't fall into a lot of the pitfalls that I've listed. But it is a really, really fun, different way to play the game, where it's a lot more like if you like survival games like Rust, etc. You obviously know some of the feelings that you'll get from playing a game like this with survival elements. It really changes the game completely. So let me know if you recently tried hardcore for the first time and you had a good time, or if you are going to be joining us on Hardcore Trade League for the upcoming Necropolis League. We'd love to have more people in the economy. Actually, a really big selling point, and actually, I know this is quite a few of my software friends switched over because of this. There is very little scamming. The people are a lot nicer because there are so few people in the economy that you do not want to be shunned from the economy. On software trade, if somebody scams you and you write in global, nobody knows, nobody's going to care. However, in hardcore trade, there's probably less than a few thousand people online at a time. So you actually are a large part of the economy. You will end up trading with the same people repeatedly. And sometimes somebody that you gave a good deal on will come back and be like, yeah, no problem. I'll reduce my price. You gave me a good deal earlier. So it does have that really cool community feel. I'm sure lots of people in the comments, all dozens of us, can vouch for that. It's a really cool time. So if you're looking for something new this Necropolis League, consider joining us on Hardcore. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Sub if you like it, but more importantly, try to die less than you're about to. Not less than I do. Good luck.